Mommy, can we get a pretzel on the way out, please? Yes, baby. Sneakers first. I never thought a Friday afternoon at the mall would be the day my son watched a man try to slap the life out of me in public. Marcus wasn't supposed to be there. The restraining order was clear. 500 feet. No contact. But there he was, pushing through the crowd. That look on his face. The one that meant he'd already decided I needed to be reminded who I belonged to. And when his hand slapped my face in front of my child, everything changed. Because that was the moment another man decided I was under his protection. And men like him? They don't protect halfway. Noah had been excited all week about new shoes. His old sneakers were splitting at the sides, the white rubber peeling away like they were shedding skin. He tried to hide it at first, shoving his feet under the couch when I noticed the damage, but kids notice everything. And eventually he admitted some boy at school had laughed when the sole flapped open during recess. So I picked up extra shifts. Skipped takeout. Told myself we'd make it a small celebration. That's how we ended up at the mall that Friday afternoon. Mommy, can we get a pretzel on the way out? He asked as we passed the food court, eyes wide hopeful. Yes, baby. Sneakers first. I told him, squeezing his hand. He grinned like that was the best deal in the world. I remember thinking for just a second that maybe things were stabilizing. Marcus hadn't tried anything in weeks. The restraining order had finally been granted. 500 feet. No contact. No showing up at my job. No late night pounding on the door. For the first time in months I felt like I could breathe in public. And then I saw him. You don't mistake the man who used to control your fear. He was across the atrium near the escalators, but I felt him before my brain processed his face. That instinctive tightening in your chest. That shift in the air. Marcus. He wasn't supposed to be here. The restraining order was clear. But there he was, pushing through the crowd like the rules didn't apply to him. Like they never had. Noah felt the shift in me instantly. His little hand tightened around mine. Mommy. It's okay. I whispered automatically, even though it wasn't. I tried to pivot casually. Tried to angle us toward the nearest store entrance without looking panicked. If I didn't react, maybe he wouldn't escalate. That was my first mistake. Elena. His voice cut through the mall noise like a blade. People turned their heads. But not enough. Never enough. Don't you walk away from me. I kept moving. Noah's hand was sweating in mine now. Mommy, that's Daddy. Before I could redirect us, Marcus reached us. He grabbed my arm and spun me around so violently my purse flew from my shoulder and hit the tile. Gasps. Whispers. Phones lifting. But nobody stepped forward. Not here, I whispered. Please. Not in front of him. You think you can just take my son and disappear? Marcus's face was flushed, eyes wild. I could smell alcohol on his breath even in the open air of the mall. You think you're better than me now? Noah, I said softly, not breaking eye contact with Marcus. Go stand behind Mommy. But Noah didn't move. He was frozen. Marcus's grip tightened on my arm. Answer me. I don't want to fight, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's when his expression shifted. A slow curl of his lip. He liked this. He liked the audience. He leaned in close enough that I could see the red veins in his eyes. You're nothing without me. And then, his hand came out of nowhere. A sharp crack exploded through the air. For a split second, I didn't understand what had happened. Then my head snapped to the side. The sound echoed louder than it should have in the open mall. My cheek burned instantly. White hot. My ears rang. The force sent me stumbling backward. My heel slipped on the polished tile and I nearly fell. Noah screamed. Stop. Daddy, stop. My hand flew to my face. Heat spread across my skin where his palm had struck me. I could feel it swelling already. People were shouting now. But they still weren't stepping in. They were recording. I could see the phones. Faces twisted in shock, mouths open but feet planted firmly in place. Marcus stepped closer, towering over me. You embarrass me in public, he shouted. You think I won't remind you? The humiliation hit harder than the slap. It wasn't just pain. It was exposure. My son was watching. Strangers were watching. And Marcus was performing. He raised his hand again. Slowly. Deliberately. Making sure everyone saw it coming. Noah grabbed onto my coat, sobbing. Please don't hurt Mommy. Marcus didn't look at him. He looked at me. That same look. Ownership. Control. Dominance. His hand came down, but it never reached me. Someone caught his wrist midair. Not frantically. Not angrily. Precisely. Controlled. The grip was firm enough that Marcus's entire body jerked to a stop. You've made enough noise, a calm voice said. It carried without shouting. Marcus twisted, shocked. Who the hell are you? The man holding him wasn't large in an obvious way. He wasn't posturing. He wasn't flexing. He was composed. Impeccably dressed. Eyes steady. Someone you don't want answering that question twice. Marcus tried to yank his arm free. He couldn't. There was no dramatic wind-up. No shouting match. Just one smooth motion. A subtle twist of the wrist that forced Marcus downward. A step forward. A single clean strike to the jaw. The sound echoed. Sharp. Final. Marcus hit the floor like gravity had been waiting for permission. The mall went silent. Not gradually. Instantly. Security guards suddenly appeared from nowhere, like they'd been summoned once the danger was already neutralized. They swarmed Marcus, who was groaning, disoriented. Noah ran to me, wrapping his arms around my waist so tightly I could barely breathe. Mommy. I'm okay, I whispered, even though my cheek was throbbing and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The stranger adjusted his cuff, like he'd just finished a meeting, not ended an assault. As security dragged Marcus upright, Marcus locked eyes with him. This isn't over, Marcus snarled. The man stepped closer. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. Yes, he said quietly. It is. But there was something in his expression that told me this wasn't finished. It was calculated, measured, strategic. Police arrived minutes later. Statements were taken. Paramedics asked if I needed medical attention. I kept shaking my head. I couldn't stop staring at the stranger. He hadn't looked at me once during the altercation. He'd focused entirely on Marcus, like eliminating a variable. When the officers finally led Marcus away in handcuffs, still shouting, still cursing, the man turned toward me for the first time. His expression shifted. Not soft, but aware. You should take him home, he said, nodding toward Noah. It wasn't a suggestion. It was guidance. And somehow I knew. This wasn't random. This wasn't impulsive. He hadn't just stepped in to help. He had decided something. And I didn't yet understand what it was. But I was about to. The police lights were still flashing when he walked toward me. Marcus was in the back of a squad car, still shouting, still fighting against the officers like rage alone could undo handcuffs. I should have felt victorious. Relieved. Safe. Instead I felt exposed. Noah was clinging to my waist so tightly his fingers were digging into my sides. I crouched down and wrapped my arms around him, pressing my cheek against the top of his head. It's okay, I whispered. It wasn't. My throat burned where Marcus's fingers had been. Every swallow felt like sandpaper. My pulse was still racing so hard I could feel it in my ears. Footsteps approached. Measured. Unhurried. I looked up. He didn't rush. Didn't loom. Didn't crowd my space. He stopped a respectful distance away, hands loosely at his sides like he was assessing whether I needed assistance or silence. Are you injured? He asked. His voice was different now. Not cold. Controlled, yes, but quieter. I'm fine, I lied automatically. His eyes flicked briefly to the bruises already darkening on my neck. That will surface by morning, he said calmly. I didn't ask how he knew. Noah peeked up at him, eyes red and swollen from crying. The man crouched slightly, not all the way down, just enough to lower his height so he wasn't towering over a child. You were very loud, he told Noah. Noah blinked. What? You yelled. That was correct. Something about the way he said it, not dramatic, not overly sweet, just factual, made Noah straighten a little. I didn't want him to hurt her. I know. Then he stood again, shifting his attention back to me. The officers were closing Marcus's door. The engine started. As the car pulled away, Marcus twisted in his seat to glare at us through the glass. This isn't over, he shouted again. The man beside me didn't flinch. Yes, he said quietly. It is. But his eyes didn't leave Marcus until the car disappeared. Only then did he look at me fully. "Why did you help me?" I asked. It came out harsher than I intended. Defensive. Suspicious. Men don't intervene like that for nothing. He didn't seem offended. "Because you didn't ask." That answer caught me off guard. What does that mean? You weren't provoking him. You weren't escalating. You weren't performing distress. His gaze held mine evenly. You were enduring it. The word hit deeper than the assault had. Enduring. I had it handled, I said automatically, even though we both knew that wasn't true. "No," he replied evenly. "You didn't. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't mocking. It was simply accurate. And because," he continued, "I don't tolerate displays of ownership." Ownership. That word again. Marcus had always framed everything that way. My apartment. My son. My woman. Like I was inventory. The man in front of me seemed to recognize that language instinctively. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. For a split second my body tensed again. Old reflex. But he only pulled out a card. Heavy stock. Matte finish. Minimal design. He handed it to me between two fingers. J. Kong. Chairman. A phone number. That was it. No company logo. No address. No explanation. Chairman of what? I asked before I could stop myself. "If he breathes in your direction again," he said instead, "call me." That doesn't answer my question. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "You don't need the rest of the information yet." Yet. The word lingered. "Why would you care?" I asked again, more quietly this time. He stepped one half-step closer. Not invading. Not touching. But close enough that I could feel the temperature shift. "Because when I decide something is under my protection," he said softly, "it stays that way. Under my protection." The phrase should have made me recoil. But instead it felt stabilizing. Like gravity. Noah tugged on my shirt. "Mommy, can we go home?" "Yes," I whispered. Kong straightened. "Go home," he agreed. That wasn't a dismissal. It was an instruction. I slipped the card into my purse with trembling fingers. He didn't ask for my number. Didn't request gratitude. Didn't linger. He simply nodded once, decisive, and walked toward a black sedan parked across the street. The driver was already outside, holding the door open. He didn't look back. That night I didn't call him. I told myself the police had handled it. Marcus was arrested. There would be consequences this time. The restraining order was already in place. The court had records. Witnesses. Video. It would be fine. I put Noah to bed early. He refused to sleep alone, so I lay beside him until his breathing evened out. But I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment Marcus's hand tightened, the way the crowd had frozen, and the way Kong hadn't. That calm. That certainty. Men like Marcus escalate with emotion. Men like Kong move without it. That realization unsettled me more than the assault had. 3 days passed. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me open it. A photo loaded slowly. Noah. Walking out of school. Backpack on. Same jacket he'd worn that morning. The timestamp was from 10 minutes earlier. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might pass out. Underneath the image. You can't hide behind him. My hand started shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. He was in jail. Marcus was in jail. Which meant someone else had taken that photo. Which meant the threat had multiplied. I didn't hesitate this time. I grabbed my purse, pulled out the card, stared at the number for half a second, then pressed call. It rang once. He answered. Yes. No greeting. No confusion. Just readiness. My son, I managed. Someone sent me a picture of him leaving school. Forward it. I did. 10 seconds of silence. I could hear faint background noise, not office chatter, something more muted. Controlled. Lock your doors, he said. What are you doing? My voice cracked. Taking control. Control of what? Everything. The line went dead. No reassurance. No comfort. Just action. 10 minutes later, 2 black SUVs pulled up outside my apartment building. Not discreet. Not subtle. Intentional. Noah came running to the window. "Mommy, who are they?" I swallowed. "They're making sure we're safe." That wasn't entirely a lie. But as I watched the suited men step out and position themselves strategically at both entrances, I realized something. This wasn't help. This was movement. Kong hadn't stepped into my life impulsively. He had entered it decisively. And now, he wasn't just responding. He was establishing territory. My phone buzzed again. "Stay inside," he said. "I didn't ask you to do this." "You didn't have to." My heart pounded. "You can't just decide things for me." A brief pause. Then, "I can decide who threatens you." There it was again. That line. That shift. He wasn't asking for permission. He was assuming responsibility. And the most terrifying part? For the first time since Marcus wrapped his fingers around my throat, I felt safer. Not because the threat was gone, but because someone far more controlled had just entered the game. And I had the distinct feeling. He didn't lose. The black SUVs stayed all night. That was the first moment I realized this wasn't temporary. 2 men rotated shifts outside my building. One remained near the entrance. Another stayed inside the lobby, seated like he lived there. They weren't obvious about it, but they weren't hiding either. It wasn't subtle protection. It was visible dominance. The message wasn't just for Marcus. It was for anyone watching. Noah kept peeking through the blinds. "Are they superheroes?" he whispered. I almost laughed. "No, baby." But I didn't know what else to call them. I barely slept. Every time headlights passed the window, I jolted awake. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart climbed into my throat. At 6:12 a.m. it rang again. "Him." "Yes," he said when I answered. "They're still here," I replied. "Yes. You didn't ask me." "I didn't need to." That irritated me more than it should have. You don't get to just move pieces around in my life. A brief pause. I move pieces when someone threatens you. I can call the police. The police respond after something happens. And you. I prevent it. The calm certainty in his voice unsettled me. "You don't even know me," I said. "I know enough." That wasn't comforting. It was observant. Later that afternoon, I saw him in person. He was standing near one of the SUVs, speaking quietly with one of the men. When he saw me exit the building, he dismissed the man with a nod and walked toward me. He wasn't dressed in a suit this time. Dark coat, crisp collar, no tie, still deliberate. "You escalated this," I said immediately. "No," he replied. "I clarified it. You parked 2 SUVs outside my home." "Yes. That draws attention." "Good." I stopped walking. He stopped too. "Good." I repeated. "Yes." His eyes were steady, unblinking. Men like Marcus operate in gray space. They test boundaries. They look for hesitation. Subtlety invites escalation. And intimidation doesn't? I shot back. He considered that for half a second. "Only if the intimidation is weak." The answer was chilling. "You don't get to decide my life," I said. "I don't decide your life," he replied evenly. "I decide who's allowed near it." There it was again. The line. "You don't own me." Something shifted in his gaze. Not anger. Not offense. Precision. "I don't own you," he said quietly. "But no one else does either." The air between us tightened. That sentence should have made me furious. Instead, it left me unsettled, because I understood what he meant. Marcus believed he owned me. Kong was rejecting that entirely. But he wasn't stepping away either. He wasn't claiming possession. He was eliminating competition. And that distinction mattered more than I wanted it to. The harassment escalated 3 days later. I came out of the grocery store pushing a cart full of bags when I saw it. My front tire. Flattened. Not punctured accidentally. Slashed. Clean cut. Noah noticed it immediately. "Mommy, what happened?" I swallowed. "It's okay." It wasn't. A note was tucked under the windshield wiper. "You can't hide behind him forever." My hand started shaking again. Before I could reach for my phone, a black sedan pulled into the lot. He stepped out. How did he know? He walked directly to the car without asking a single question and crouched beside the tire. His fingers traced the cut rubber. He's reaching, he said quietly. For what? My voice sounded thin. For control. I felt anger flare. You're escalating this. He stood slowly. No. Yes, you are. He's reacting to you. No, Kong said, voice even. He's reacting to losing. That stopped me. You think this is about you? I know it is. He looked at me fully then. Men like him cannot tolerate displacement. I'm not property, I snapped. I'm aware. Then stop talking like I'm territory. His jaw tightened slightly. I don't see you as territory. Then what is this? He stepped closer. Not touching, but close enough that I felt the steadiness radiating from him. This, he said quietly, is containment. I blinked. What? You were surviving in open space. Vulnerable. Reactive. That ends now. That's not your decision to make. No, he agreed. It was his mistake to make. Silence. Then, I'm ending it. How? I demanded. He held my gaze. By making him understand that touching you was the most expensive mistake of his life. There was no raised voice. No threat. Just inevitability. And something inside me recognized it. He wasn't going to fight Marcus emotionally. He was going to dismantle him strategically. The court hearing came faster than expected. Additional charges appeared on Marcus's case file. Witness intimidation. Harassment. Tampering. Documentation I didn't even know existed. Did you do this? I asked Kong quietly in the hallway outside the courtroom. I organized what already existed. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need. When Marcus entered the courtroom, he looked smug, confident, until he saw Kong sitting directly behind me. Something changed in his face. The smirk flickered, then vanished. The prosecutor presented evidence one after another. Security footage, call logs, statements. The judge's expression hardened. When Marcus's lawyer tried to argue for leniency, Kong didn't react. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat. He just watched, observing. When the judge extended the sentence by 5 additional years, Marcus stood abruptly. You think you own her? He shouted toward Kong. The entire courtroom froze. Kong stood slowly. He didn't shout back. Didn't insult him. Didn't threaten. He just looked at him. Held his gaze. Unmoving. Marcus's voice faltered. And then, Marcus looked away first. The bailiff grabbed his arm. He was let out shouting. But the power dynamic had already shifted. Outside the courthouse, my knees nearly buckled. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding myself together. It's over, Kong said quietly. You can't promise that. Yes, he replied. I can. I looked at him then. Really looked at him. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't triumphant. He was calm. Because this wasn't victory to him. It was correction. And that realization did something complicated inside my chest. Because I understood something now. Marcus had tried to control me with chaos. Kong controlled chaos with precision. One was reckless. The other was deliberate. And somewhere between those two extremes, I had stepped into a different kind of danger. Not loud, not violent, but absolute. Protection had become power. And I wasn't sure anymore where the line between safety and surrender truly was. He asked me to meet him on a rooftop downtown. Not a restaurant. Not an office. A rooftop. When I stepped out of the elevator, the city stretched endlessly below us. Glass towers reflecting gold from the setting sun. Traffic moving like quiet veins of light. It should have felt romantic. It didn't. It felt intentional. He was already there, standing near the edge, hands resting lightly on the railing. No bodyguards in sight this time. No visible protection. Just him. You came, he said without turning. You said it was important. It is. The wind tugged at my hair as I walked closer. My pulse felt louder up there. Exposed. Like the height stripped away excuses. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he said it. You're afraid of me. It wasn't accusatory. It was observational. Yes, I admitted. He nodded once. Good. I blinked. Good. You should never feel completely safe with a man who pretends he can't destroy things. The words settled heavy between us. That's not reassuring. It's honest. I studied him in the fading light. His expression wasn't cruel. It wasn't threatening. It was controlled. Self-aware. Can you? I asked quietly. Can I what? Destroy things. A long pause. Yes. The answer was simple. No dramatics. No pride. Just fact. But I choose not to, he added. Why? Because destruction is easy. Control is discipline. That line stayed with me. Control is discipline. I wrapped my arms around myself against the wind. You talk about protection like it's a contract I didn't sign. He turned toward me fully then. I don't need you to sign anything. That's the problem. Silence. Then he stepped closer, not invading, just reducing distance. I had a son, he said. The shift in tone was immediate. Lower. Quieter. He was 6. I didn't interrupt. Car accident. Drunk driver. I wasn't there. I was at a meeting. Building something I thought mattered. His jaw tightened slightly, but his voice didn't break. I arrived 2 hours too late. The city noise below felt very far away. I failed once, he continued. I don't repeat failures. This isn't the same, I whispered. No, he agreed. It isn't. Then why does it feel like you're trying to fix something through us? He held my gaze. I'm not fixing the past, he said. I'm refusing to let history repeat itself. That was different. Subtle. But different. I'm not yours, I said again, softer this time. He didn't argue. Not yet. The air between us tightened. If you choose me, he continued, understand something clearly. I don't step back. I don't share. And I don't lose. That sounds like ownership. No, he said evenly. It's commitment. Those can look the same. Only if the woman doesn't choose. That stopped me. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't cornering. He was laying out terms. If I never choose you? I asked. Then I will still ensure you're safe, he replied calmly. But I will not stand beside you. And if I do? His voice lowered. Then I stand in front of you. Always. The wind picked up, carrying the hum of the city below. For the first time I saw something beneath the discipline. Loneliness. Grief sharpened into structure. He wasn't obsessed. He was deliberate. And that might have been more dangerous. Because obsession burns out. Deliberation builds. I don't want to be controlled, I said quietly. Then don't surrender control, he replied. Protection doesn't require surrender. Then what does it require? Trust. Simple. One word. But heavier than everything else he'd said that night. We stood there in silence after that. No dramatic move. No kiss. No claim. Just the city below and the space between us shifting into something that wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't safety either. It was awareness. And I realized something standing on that rooftop. Marcus had tried to own me through chaos. Kong was offering something else. Not ownership. Not freedom. Something in between. And I still didn't know whether that space was a sanctuary or a gilded cage. 2 weeks after the rooftop, I started night classes. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some grand declaration of independence. It was just a classroom in a community college building that smelled faintly like dry erase markers and overbrewed coffee. But it was mine. My decision. My step forward. For the first time in a long time, I was doing something that wasn't about surviving Marcus or responding to Kong. It was about rebuilding myself. Noah adjusted quickly to the routine. Kang's security presence had quietly scaled back to something less visible, though I knew better than to think it was gone. Protection with him didn't disappear. It repositioned. That's where I met Daniel. He sat 2 seats over during the first lecture, laptop open, sleeves rolled up neatly. He looked like the kind of man who held doors open without making it a performance. We ended up paired for a project by coincidence. Single parent? He asked casually when we compared schedules. Yeah, I replied. Same, he said with a small smile. My daughter's 6. There was something soft about him. No sharp edges. No intensity humming beneath his words. Just steady. Safe. We started studying together after class once or twice a week. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing hidden. Just notes spread across a table. Shared frustrations about assignments. Occasional laughter. He didn't look at me like I was fragile. He didn't look at me like I was territory. He just looked at me like I was normal. And I hadn't realized how much I missed that. The night everything shifted, we were standing in the campus parking lot. It was late enough that the lot had thinned out. The air was cool. I was halfway through laughing at something he'd said when headlights flooded across us. Bright. Deliberate. Slow. I didn't need to turn to know. Black SUV. Engine idling. Daniel's posture changed immediately. Do you know them? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. The driver's door opened. Kong stepped out. Not rushed. Not aggressive. Measured. He walked toward us with the same controlled gait he carried into courtrooms. You didn't tell me you were coming, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. You didn't tell me you'd need a ride, he replied. Daniel extended his hand automatically. Daniel. Kong looked at the offered hand. Then at Daniel. He didn't take it. Jay. No smile. No warmth. Just assessment. We were just studying, Daniel added quickly. I'm sure you were, Kong replied. The temperature between them dropped instantly. Not loud. Not dramatic. But unmistakable. Daniel cleared his throat. I should get going. Kong didn't step aside immediately. He didn't block him aggressively. He simply occupied space. After a brief pause, he shifted just enough. Daniel left. The silence that followed was thick. That was unnecessary, I said once Daniel's car pulled away. Was it? Kong replied calmly. You embarrassed him. I evaluated him. He's harmless. No man who lingers near you is harmless. The certainty in his tone snapped something in me. Not everything is a threat. Everything is a variable. I'm not a business asset. No, he agreed. You're not. Then stop talking like I need to be screened. He stepped closer. Not invading, but enough to lower his voice. I don't screen, he said evenly. Then what do you do? I assess risk. Daniel is not a risk. Every man is. That hung in the air. That's not healthy, I said quietly. It's accurate. There it was again. Not emotional. Not jealous. Just precise. Are you jealous? I asked finally. A pause. Long enough to matter. I don't compete, he said. That wasn't my question. His gaze darkened slightly. If you choose me, he said quietly, there is no competition. You don't own exclusivity. No, he agreed. You offer it. That sentence landed like a key turning in a lock. He wasn't demanding loyalty. He was stating the structure of his world. In his world, you don't have choose. You don't keep doors open. You don't entertain options. You decide. And once you decide, it's permanent. You don't get to narrow my world because you're afraid of losing control. I said. I'm not afraid of losing control. Then what are you afraid of? He studied me. Losing you. The honesty startled me. It wasn't possessive. It wasn't theatrical. It was simple. I haven't chosen anyone, I said. I know. Then why act like I have? Because if you do, he replied quietly, I need to know where I stand. That surprised me. You sound insecure. I am not insecure, he said calmly. I am decisive. That sounds the same. It isn't. Silence stretched between us. The parking lot lights buzzed faintly overhead. Daniel makes me feel normal, I admitted. Kang's jaw tightened slightly. And what do I make you feel? I hesitated. Safe. And. I swallowed. Seen. He stepped closer. And. My voice lowered. Unsettled. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Good. I shook my head. Why is that your favorite response? Because comfort breeds complacency, he said. And complacency gets people hurt. You're not my bodyguard, I snapped. No, he said evenly. I'm the man who ends threats. And what happens when there are no threats left? He didn't answer immediately. The silence was heavier this time. Then I build, he said finally. And if I don't want to build with you? His expression didn't change. Then I step aside. That surprised me. You would. Yes. Just like that. No, he said quietly. It would not be easy. But you would. Yes. Because control, I realized, wasn't about forcing. It was about deciding once. And standing by it. Why didn't you shake his hand? I asked. Because I don't pretend neutrality, he replied. You were claiming space. Yes. At least you're honest. He stepped closer one final inch. If you choose me, he said, voice low, there is no middle ground. I don't share attention. I don't tolerate ambiguity. And I don't lose. You keep saying that. Because it's true. And if I don't choose you? His voice didn't waver. Then I will still ensure you are safe. But I will not remain close. The distinction was clear. Protection was separate from possession. But closeness? That required exclusivity. And suddenly I understood the real tension. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about permanence. Daniel offered comfort. Kong offered commitment with consequences. One felt light. The other felt inevitable. As he opened the passenger door of the SUV for me, he said quietly, "You're free to choose, Elena." It didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a boundary. But understand this, he added. If you step toward me, there's no stepping back, I finished. His eyes held mine. No. And as I got into the SUV, heart pounding harder than it should have been, I realized something. The most dangerous thing about him wasn't his power. It was that he wasn't trying to cage me. He was waiting for me to walk in willingly. And I didn't know yet which part of that terrified me more. So tell me, is that protection? Or possession? And when the man who can end your fear is also the man who demands your loyalty, which one feels safer? Let me know in the comments. Because what happened next tested that answer in ways I never expected.